Hey everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel where I review miniatures and do loads of unboxings. It's a lot of fun, so thanks for joining me. I sure love miniatures. Huh? Hey, what's this? Free miniatures. NDA? Sure, I'll sign an NDA. Looks boilerplate. Oh boy, thanks a lot, mister. Oh boy, gang, I can't wait to see what exciting new miniatures that are secret that we'll get to see. Hey gang, I have some exciting news. New Space Marines are coming out. Hey gang, I've got some exciting news. New Space Marines are coming out. Hey gang, another video today. They sent me more Space Marines. They didn't send the arm though. To be honest, I'm sort of getting a little bit sick of Space Marines and... No! Hey everyone, my name is Discourse, and today I want to talk about the creator community and what Games Workshop thinks of them. So put away your plastic toys and take your fleshy ones out, because today we're dealing with real people. That is awful imagery, I'm sorry. Ugh. So recently, one of Games Workshop's alleged hush-hush NDA templates was leaked. And this has popped up in a lot of different places online. I first saw this in a Reddit post on the Sig Marxism subreddit, and there is a link to that post in the description of this video. And there's a lot of content creators who are commenting on this. And this NDA is super interesting actually. So to give some context, an NDA stands for a non-disclosure agreement. And generally speaking, they're pretty typical in a lot of industries. And they essentially act to prohibit one party to that NDA from, well, in the immortal words of Willem Dafoe in The Lighthouse, spilling the beans, Tommy. That is to say, basically, you're going to get confidential information. Don't be telling anybody about it, and sign this to make sure that we can bring you to court if you do. And honestly, so far so good. NDAs serve a really important purpose, because in the context of YouTube and content creation, content creators will often be given early access to review copies of products, with the understanding that they will review this product so that consumers know whether that product is worth buying or not. And obviously, this serves a super important part of the industry. And it's really valuable for viewers to be able to see whether or not an item is worth buying before it is available to buy, or at least on time. Now, because Games Workshop sends these items out to reviewers before that product is available to buy, they will often have these content creators sign NDAs, which prohibits them from revealing the upcoming releases. And this is done so that the marketing department for Games Workshop can get everything into gear and prepared for a big release. And honestly, that makes sense, because you know, it's so hard to guess that Games Workshop have another Primaris release in the pipeline. Ugh. But I want to pose a question to you, and when I do, just keep in the back of your head the type of business practices that Games Workshop routinely engage in and how they treat their customers. So bearing that in mind, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being saintly and 10 being satanly, how fair do you think the terms of this alleged NDA are? Wrong, it's 13. Very unlucky number. That's right, we got to see it and its terms, and it's a big oof. Now let's do that really fun thing and review the law. And I hope you know I started this channel in the very first place to escape a life in legal practice. No celebrating. I do not want to get into the habit of this, and Games Workshop better not give me cause to do so either. I'm warning you, GW, I really mean it. I hate this. Now, full disclosure, I have never seen an NDA from Games Workshop before. I mean, do you think Games Workshop would want to send me products for review? I'm pretty sure that my face is on a dartboard at GWHQ. But that said, I'm aware that the NDA language used in this contract is new, and there were plenty of really big content creators in that Reddit thread explaining that they have never seen language like this before. And there is a general consensus among the content creator community, based on a number of different sources, that this NDA is a real document that has come directly from Games Workshop. So I just want to run through my interpretation of what the NDA says and explain it in plain English, picking out particular points of interest, and then give you my opinion on why Games Workshop might be doing this. And I want to quickly add a legal disclaimer. I am not your lawyer. This is not legal advice. This is all speculation on my part. Don't sue me, GW. This is all my opinion, and it is my own personal interpretation of this document. And I feel that I am acting as an honest person. And in this video, we'll be reflecting on the NDA as if it had come directly from Games Workshop. However, they are more than welcome to correct the community as to whether or not this document has indeed come directly from them. And if this speculation is incorrect, I will be happy to post as such in the description of this video. Okay, legal disclaimer out of the way. I'm genuinely concerned about this one, so let's just crack on. Okay, so NDAs. I hate this so much. The law is not fun. If you're thinking about getting into law, reconsider. Okay, so the first clause I want to look at in this contract is clause 6. And we're jumping all over the place here, so stick with me. And this is known as an indemnification clause. Stop. Just give me a moment. I can make this interesting. 1 second. Okay, I'm back. Here we are. This is what you wanted, right? This is it. Fun and engaging. So let's get to it. Let's do this legal analysis. Okay, so indemnification. My script literally just says, say what indemnification is, but as a clown. Great. Thanks, past me. Very useful. So to put it really simply, indemnification is basically a fancy way of saying that you will pay for the losses or harm that the other party incurred. And clause 6 in this NDA is such an indemnity clause. And it basically lays out that the signer will pay for any damages or losses, including loss of profit and reputation for any breach or non-performance of this NDA, or incurred in Games Workshop's enforcement of this NDA, even if the signer was found not to be at fault. So in other words, this NDA would force the content creator to pay for Games Workshop's legal expenses and losses, even if they didn't do anything wrong. Now, generally speaking, indemnity clauses are pretty common, but this one is, very one-sided and not normal. From my experience, they tend to be negotiated pretty heavily. However, I must stress that I don't think that very many small content creators will have the wherewithal or knowledge to even understand what this clause is saying. Never mind, negotiate it. But that's by the by. Oh, I don't have a nose. I thought I got a nose. Honk honk. Having fun yet? Next, we're going to fly back to the beginning of the contract and look at the definition of restricted customer. Ooh, what could it mean? Well, we don't know. And I would speculate that Games Workshop don't really know either, because all it says is that restricted customer is someone who is a customer or client of Games Workshop. So it's open to interpretation that, in theory, it's just every single person in the world who has ever bought a Warhammer miniature. Yikes. Now, this could have originally been drafted to catch big vendors in the definition. Maybe that would make sense. But it can be interpreted as so wide as to include every single Warhammer player. In clause 4.1.1, it basically says that the content creator will not try to induce a restricted customer. So read that as vendors or anyone who's bought Warhammer products, we don't know. The content creator will not attempt to induce those people to stop doing business with GW, or attempt to get them to reduce their business with GW. So, in essence, this clause could, in my opinion, have the effect of basically saying, hey, if you try to get other people to play different games in your videos, then we'll come after you. Yikes! That's crazy! Like, that's utterly mad. I can't do that justice. I'm dressed as a clown, and this clause is a bigger joke than me. And next up, we have clause 4.1.2. And I promise we're done soon. Oh dear God, I hate legal stuff. And this seems to be designed to prevent someone from poaching Games Workshop employees. This is commonly known as a non-solicitation clause. And this basically means that you can't attempt to convince any of Games Workshop's suppliers or employees to reduce their business with Games Workshop. So this one makes a little bit more sense to me than the previous clause, but it's super interesting and to my mind has probably been drafted in response to content creators like Duncan Rhodes, Kill, Danny from 3D Printing, or Miniac, who have gone on to create their own products and miniature lines. And this seems like Games Workshop want to prevent any future content creators from doing the same. So rather than help uplift the community, I would speculate that Games Workshop seem to want to stop this proliferation of independent lines at the root. Because, and this is really important, the term of this contract is 3 years. Oh yeah, did I not mention that? Yeah, it's pretty lengthy, and is an absurdly long time for this type of contract. If Duncan had signed this, then he probably wouldn't have been able to do that Kickstarter of his. And then there's some other stuff about using logos or trademarked images from Games Workshop, and this might seem pretty innocuous and reasonable at first blush. But for example, this would make a creator liable if they used a Games Workshop logo in their YouTube thumbnail, for example. So this could really come back to haunt a few people, I imagine, and could basically be used down the line. Remember, 3 years. And finally, we come to the really fun one. Honk honk. Ugh, I ruined my makeup. Clause 4.1.7. I can feel the viewers dropping like flies. But this clause is super gnarly, and I'm going to quote here. It prohibits the signer from doing or saying anything that may be harmful to the reputation of Games Workshop. So like what? Using a toy in a battle report? Got him! But like seriously, now whether anything is or is not harmful to Games Workshop's reputation would be something that needs to be hashed out in a courtroom. So this is a clause that would give me real pause if I were to be presented with this NDA. And it forms the real meat of the bulk of the distaste from the content creator community, I think, because it is immediately obvious what the implication of this clause is, in my opinion. Now, allow me a very brief aside. Now, there is a bit of debate online about 4.1.7 and whether or not it is a non-disparagement clause or a defamation clause. And this is sort of important in the sense that a non-disparagement clause would prohibit anything said by the signer, regardless of whether it is true or not. Whereas a defamation clause would not. If what you said was true, it wouldn't be prohibited under a defamation clause. Now, those saying that this is simply a defamation clause are wrong, in my opinion. And I have a source on this. Compare this sample disparagement clause against the one in this NDA, and you'll see that they look very similar. But the really important thing is, I don't think that matters. This language is plainly worded, but also very vague. In fact, I actually think the Games Workshop might be mistaken about what this clause does, in my opinion. I'm not going to guess at their intention, but I will say this much. This is written in pretty plain language, and to read this as a content creator from that perspective, it is clear. This is, in my personal opinion, essentially a gagging order. You are not to say anything that could potentially harm Games Workshop's reputation. And remember that earlier point I made about the indemnification? About how, to my reading, if Games Workshop were to incur loss or costs in relation to enforcing this contract, and then how, even if it turns out that you were in the right, you would still need to pay for their costs? Now that clause is looking even more frightening now, right? But most people won't know what that clause even does. And now, overall, it must always be remembered that this NDA can't be read in a vacuum. This is for a specific audience. It is a commercial agreement. Games Workshop, presumably, in my opinion, know that small creators will read this clause. They know, in my opinion, what the implication is. You can infer that if you do anything to damage Games Workshop's reputation, that they will have cause to come after you. That is a reasonable inference for someone who is not a lawyer. And if you are a small channel, you will be forced to follow that instruction. This clause has a chilling effect on the independence of a small channel. This will always be at the back of your mind when you produce any content. Will this content be bad? Will it accidentally damage GW's reputation? What does that even mean? How could I tell? How far will you err to make sure that doesn't happen? And look, at the end of the day, the takeaway here should really be that this NDA is super vague in all the worst ways. It's sort of like classic Games Workshop rules. Overbearing yet useless. Now, there are a lot of caveats to what I've been saying here, and there will be plenty that I have probably missed in case law. This is not my area of expertise, and as you can see, I am a clown. But broadly speaking, none of that matters, because this NDA is aimed at small content creators. These are not people making any amount of money from this, and they are unlikely to be soliciting lawyers to review their contracts, honestly. So for many of them, what you see is what you get, and they likely won't pick up a lot of the nuances in these clauses. Obviously, these NDAs seem to be intended for fans of Warhammer, and that's the worst bit. But admittedly, it's standard MO for Games Workshop when it comes to, well, anything. But I want you to put yourself in the shoes of a small YouTube hobby channel. I don't know, maybe you create some Necron Sandstone tutorials and you suddenly blow up and you get lots of new viewers and subscribers. Oh, wow. Awesome, the channel is growing, you think. Hey, maybe there's something to this. And then Games Workshop show up. And to you, this is super cool. You think, awesome, I have finally made it. My work has been validated by the people who make the products that I love. And they want me to keep making that content. That's great. And they say, we want to support your channel. We can send you new stuff for free. Just sign an NDA and you're good to go. And anyone would probably think, yeah, of course, an NDA, totally reasonable. Send it over and sign away. Probably after a quick skim of the clauses. Hey, it's probably boilerplate, right? And you know, you really like Games Workshop stuff. And you sort of trust them. They're business people. They know how this works and you don't. There is an imbalance of power in this relationship. And that sucks because, as we discussed, this NDA strikes me as very predatory. And it will likely strangle the life out of a small channel. Because again, the term of this NDA is 3 years, with no option to terminate. So if you sign this, you're in it for the long haul, with no chance to change your mind. So enjoy your free box of Space Marines. But wow, what psychic trauma. Because let's be clear, signing this NDA would, in my opinion, be one of the worst decisions you could make as a small YouTube creator. It might seem like a good idea. For most hobby channels, and there's a lot of them, it's hard to get views. So getting early products and being able to produce reviews earlier than others is a really big win. It could really help your channel grow. But the cost of this, to me, is too great for too little. When you really boil this down to its very essence, it is basically that you'll get a couple $100 worth of plastic in exchange for 3 years where you explicitly cannot criticize Games Workshop. Maybe you can't even talk about other game systems in case it entices customers away, and you won't be able to monetize your content beyond AdSense, which isn't enough to sustain anyone. You'll be forced, in my opinion, into becoming a corporate shill. And it's confidential, so you can't even tell anyone. You will have no mouth, and yet you will want to scream. Not a good deal, in my opinion. This NDA is utterly stifling, and it completely undermines the independence of your channel. The wording in this document to me is dangerously vague and yet very broad. Again, very similar to a Warhammer rulebook. Would you entrust your potential livelihood to a rule in a Warhammer book? I wouldn't. Oh, and also for some of the commenters out there, I don't care what a standard NDA in your industry looks like. This document isn't anything like a standard NDA for review product. Imagine if a video game reviewer had to sign an NDA with Square Enix and then couldn't review any other video game company's game. It's ridiculous and silly. This isn't legal advice, but my advice in a personal capacity as someone who has a small YouTube channel, oh, and subscribe if you're enjoying this content to make me a little bit bigger, is to stay away from this. If you see an NDA like this, I wouldn't sign it. Just buy the product and get an accountant to help you write it off as a business expense. You'll save loads of money in taxes if you do that, if that's what you really want. This just isn't worth it. Now, Midwinter Minis recently put in a video about how he was pursuing Games Workshop for a loss of income. This loss of income occurred whenever Games Workshop put a manual copyright claim on his review of Warhammer Plus. And this cost him a pretty substantial amount of cash, because that copyright claim caused that video to become demonetized. And for someone whose job is contingent on producing content for his channel, that is a really dangerous precedent. And so, good luck to him. I totally support his endeavor to seek a remedy, because really, content creators need to stand together against this type of practice, no matter from where they emerge. And we need to work together and look out for one another. Because if any other channels have signed this alleged NDA, and they may have, we wouldn't officially know, it's confidential. It undermines the integrity of every single channel, and it damages our legitimacy as an independent source of information, not contingent on the whims of Games Workshop's PR department. But with this NDA, in my opinion, viewers can't ever know. Is that channel biased? To what extent? Are they contractually obliged to be nice about Games Workshop products? Do you think I am? Awareness about this, in my opinion, is super important. Hey everyone, it's Discourse here from the future, of at least when this video was first recorded. Boy, that clown makeup really messed up my workflow. And it's really hard to get off, so bear that in mind if you ever plan on doing an analysis of a legal document dressed as a clown. Let me be the canary in the coal mine for that one. But I wanted to quickly throw this segment into the video because since I've recorded it, there's been a growing narrative that the NDA I talk about here is a fake. And this is mostly based on an analysis of different grammatical mistakes, formatting errors, an out-of-date logo, and the fact that the word GW is not defined in this document. Firstly, let me say that as someone who has dealt with a lot of lawyers, especially in-house ones, and I don't want to offend any in-house lawyers out there, I completely understand your struggles. But these things do not detract from the validity of this document to me. I think that a lot of people believe that lawyers are like slick downtown attorneys with sharp suits and polished shoes, like in Suits? I don't know, I don't really watch a lot of TV shows about lawyers. Although I do watch Better Call Saul and Accused. Discourse says, check it out. But in reality, Games Workshop lawyers are more likely to be on around 20k a year and probably work in an environment very similar to The Office. And that's the UK version, not the glitz and glamour of the US one. People are lazy, and document templates might not be consistent across a team. Clauses for a commercial contract may be clawed from another completely different document. And not everyone has updated the documents that are in their personal drives. Lawyers are not superheroes, and the standards of contracts are not as high as you think, especially if the document is routine. Besides, this document isn't intended for general consumption. It's a confidential agreement. It's very easy to be lazy about these things. I should know. And people often copy and paste from one document to another without much thought to things like formatting. And some people know how to use Microsoft Word better than others. I would speculate that these clauses probably come from Games Workshop's internal employee contracts, as they try to backdoor online creators into an employment relationship, except with no wage and a term that lasts in perpetuity. And whoever put these clauses in just didn't do a very good job of making it neat. And again, Games Workshop are free to make it clear to the community whether this is or is not true. I await this with bated breath. I myself believe the raft of credible content creators who are, frankly, not known for stoking drama and who have put their own reputation and their relationship with Games Workshop on the line to bring this predatory document to our attention as a community. I stand with them in doing so. It has been really sad for me to see parts of the community treat these content creators the way that Wormtongue treated the three hunters whenever they arrived in the court of King Theoden. But I expect that this will all become clearer in time, and the truth will out. And I just want to thank my patrons who you can see on the screen here. They afford me the freedom to avoid these types of deals and maintain my independence, and honestly help keep the channel running. So if you are interested in supporting a fight back on behalf of miniature wargame hobbyists, please do check out my Patreon at patreon.com/discourseminiatures. There is a link in the description below. You get early access to the intro skits, behind the scenes content, and even a sexy Discord supporter rank. Ooh. So thank you for that, and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more content like this. Bye-bye! A really interesting aspect to this is that it is drafted like an employment contract, but the job pays no wage and lasts for 3 years. So weird. Regardless of the actual legal ramifications of this document, the message I've gotten is clear. Take the product and advertise it. That's it. Don't do anything else. Critique is not welcome. That is not a cool way to treat the community at all, and doesn't speak to you being confident in your product. I'm going to critique you, Games Workshop. You can't stop me. And honestly, I feel sorry for anyone who signed this.